Sometimes an actor disappears so completely into a role that you genuinely forget you're watching a real person underneath. No CGI trickery, no camera tricks, just hours of prosthetics, motion capture suits, or sheer physical transformation, all in service of becoming someone or something almost unrecognizable. Few people realize just how much these performances actually cost the actors behind them: hours in makeup chairs before sunrise, uncomfortable suits worn for entire shoots, and in a few cases, psychological tolls that followed them long after filming ended. Some of these transformations became so iconic that audiences forgot the actor's real face entirely, at least for the length of the film. Others required so much dedication that the process itself became almost as famous as the performance. In this video, we're breaking down 10 of the most unbelievable actor transformations in film history, how they built these characters, the secrets behind the makeup chair, and the surprising toll some of these roles took. A couple of these stories are genuinely wild. One of them ends in real tragedy. Stay until the end, because two of these actors played the exact same iconic character, in completely different ways, and the comparison is fascinating. Let's start with a comedian who turned himself green for 6 hours a day. 1. Jim Carrey as the Grinch. By the year 2000, Jim Carrey was already one of the most famous comedic actors on the planet, known for his rubber-faced physical comedy and larger-than-life energy. But nothing could have prepared him for what became one of the most physically punishing transformations in mainstream Hollywood history. To play the Grinch, Carrey had to sit in a makeup chair for roughly 2 hours every single morning, just for application, with the process taking even longer on more demanding shooting days. Few people know just how uncomfortable the actual costume and makeup became over the course of the production. Carrey has spoken candidly in later interviews about the sheer physical toll of the role, describing how the yellow contact lenses he wore for the character severely restricted his vision, forcing him to essentially perform many scenes almost blind, relying on memorized blocking rather than actually seeing his surroundings clearly. However, that's only part of the story. The prosthetic makeup covering his face and body was so extensive that Carrey reportedly couldn't feed himself properly during meal breaks, and he said in interviews that the full removal process at the end of each shooting day took nearly as long as the application itself, often stretching his total daily commitment to the film well beyond 12 hours before he even got to act. What happened next surprised many who assumed the discomfort might affect his performance. Instead, Carrey delivered a performance so committed and physically expressive that critics specifically praised how much genuine emotion he managed to convey despite being almost completely obscured under prosthetics, relying entirely on body language, vocal delivery, and whatever small facial movements the makeup allowed. Unfortunately, Carrey has also discussed how difficult the sheer daily physical demands became as filming stretched on for months, describing the experience in later interviews as one of the most grueling of his entire career, despite the film ultimately becoming a massive holiday classic that's rewatched by families every single year. Looking back, Carrey has said that despite the suffering involved, he remains genuinely proud of the performance, viewing the physical sacrifice as directly responsible for how convincingly the character came to life on screen, something he felt would have been impossible to achieve through a more comfortable, less committed approach. Now 2026, The Grinch remains one of the most beloved holiday films of the 2000s, and Carrey's transformation is still frequently cited in makeup and prosthetics retrospectives as one of the most demanding non-CGI transformations ever achieved in a major studio film. Carrey has continued acting steadily in the decades since, occasionally reflecting fondly, if painfully, on the 6-hour daily commitment that brought the Grinch to life. 2. Heath Ledger as the Joker. Few performances in modern film history are discussed with quite the same reverence, and quite the same sadness, as Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker. Ledger's approach to the role went far beyond typical makeup and costume preparation. Few people know just how deeply Ledger immersed himself in constructing the character's psychology before filming even began, reportedly spending weeks alone developing the Joker's voice, posture, and mannerisms in near isolation, treating the preparation almost like building an entirely separate person from scratch. However, that's only part of the story. Ledger famously kept a private journal filled with the character's thoughts, favorite jokes, and philosophical musings, a level of method-style preparation that co-stars and crew members have since described as unlike anything they'd witnessed from an actor before. The character's now iconic smeared, deliberately imperfect makeup was reportedly Ledger's own creative input, intended to suggest the Joker applied it himself, hastily and without any real self-image or vanity, a small detail that added enormous psychological depth to the character's visual identity. What happened next surprised absolutely no one who saw the finished film, but shocked the industry in a different way entirely. Ledger's performance was met with universal critical acclaim upon release, widely regarded as one of the greatest villain performances in cinema history. Tragically, Ledger passed away in January 2008, several months before the film's release, at just 28 years old, a loss that devastated the film industry and cast an inescapable shadow over the film's eventual premiere. Unfortunately, the intensity of his preparation for the role became a significant part of the public conversation following his death, with colleagues and interviewers alike questioning whether the psychologically demanding process had contributed to the exhaustion and difficulty he reportedly experienced in the months surrounding filming, though his family and closest collaborators have cautioned against oversimplifying his passing as directly caused by the role alone. Looking back, Ledger was posthumously awarded the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, becoming only the second actor in history to win an acting Oscar posthumously, an emotional, bittersweet moment that his family accepted on his behalf. Now 2026, nearly 2 decades later, Ledger's Joker remains widely regarded as the definitive cinematic version of the character, still cited by actors, directors, and critics as one of the greatest performances ever committed to film. His work on this single role continues to influence how audiences and filmmakers think about villain performances in the superhero genre, a legacy that's only grown more significant with time. 3. Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. When it was announced that a relatively unknown Swedish actor would be taking on one of horror's most iconic villains, many longtime fans were skeptical, wondering how anyone could follow such a beloved earlier television portrayal of the character. Few people know just how deliberately Bill Skarsgård worked to build an entirely different, more disturbing interpretation of Pennywise from the ground up, reportedly studying predatory animal behavior and unsettling historical figures to develop a physicality that felt genuinely inhuman rather than simply clown-like. However, that's only part of the story. Skarsgård trained extensively to control one eye independently of the other, a subtle but deeply unsettling physical trick that became one of the character's most talked about visual signatures. He's also spoken in interviews about deliberately keeping some distance from the rest of the young cast during filming, wanting them to feel a genuine sense of unease around him on set, believing that authentic discomfort would translate more effectively on screen than simple performed menace. What happened next surprised even the studio executives who greenlit the project. The film became a massive critical and commercial success, and Skarsgård's performance was almost universally praised as one of the most effective and disturbing horror villain portrayals in recent memory, instantly establishing comparisons to the genre's most iconic monsters. Unfortunately, the physical toll of the role was significant as well. Skarsgård has discussed the discomfort of extensive daily prosthetic and makeup application, along with wearing specialized lenses and dental prosthetics for extended periods, describing the overall process as physically taxing across the demanding, multi-film production schedule. Looking back, Skarsgård has said in interviews that he approached the role with a mix of genuine dedication and dark humor, understanding the responsibility of stepping into a character with such a beloved cinematic history while still finding ways to make the portrayal distinctly his own. Now 2026, Skarsgård's Pennywise has become one of the defining horror performances of the 2010s, spawning a hugely successful sequel and cementing his status as one of the genre's most respected new generation actors. He's continued building a diverse career since, but the role remains the performance most closely associated with his name, one he's continued to discuss with pride in retrospective interviews. 4. Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. Long before he became known for more dramatic and franchise-leading roles, Michael Keaton delivered one of the most chaotic, unpredictable performances of the 1980s as the title character in a supernatural comedy that quickly became a cult classic. Few people know Keaton actually had remarkably limited screen time in the finished film, appearing for only a fraction of its total runtime, yet his performance was so explosive and memorable that the character became inseparable from the film's entire identity and title. However, that's only part of the story. Keaton has spoken in interviews about approaching the role with almost complete creative freedom, largely improvising much of his dialogue and physical behavior on set, an unusually loose approach for a major studio production at the time. The filmmakers reportedly gave him enormous latitude specifically because his unpredictable energy was exactly what the character needed, a chaotic, morally ambiguous, bio-exorcist, who felt genuinely dangerous and unstable in every scene. What happened next surprised industry observers who initially worried the character's limited screen time might undercut his impact. Instead, Keaton's performance became so beloved that it launched an entire franchise identity, complete with an animated television series and, decades later, a long-awaited feature film sequel that reunited Keaton with the character audiences had never stopped wanting more of. Looking back, Keaton has often described the role as one of the most purely fun creative experiences of his career, a rare opportunity to work almost entirely outside the constraints of a traditional, tightly scripted performance. Now 2026, Keaton's Beetlejuice remains one of the most iconic comedic horror performances in film history, and his return to the role decades later in a modern sequel was met with widespread critical and fan enthusiasm, proving the character's staying power had never actually faded. Today, Keaton is regarded as one of the rare actors whose brief, chaotic screen time in a single film managed to create an entire enduring cultural icon. 5. Ralph Fiennes as Lord Voldemort. Few casting decisions in modern fantasy cinema generated quite as much intrigue as the announcement that a classically trained, widely respected dramatic actor would be taking on one of literature's most feared villains. Ralph Fiennes had already built a reputation as one of the finest actors of his generation through intensely serious, award-caliber dramatic work, making his casting as a nose-less, snake-like dark wizard feel like an unexpected creative gamble at the time. Few people know just how extensive the physical transformation actually required for the role. Fiennes had to act entirely without a nose, a decision achieved through digital effects combined with practical prosthetic work that left him performing every single scene with his nostrils essentially erased, forcing him to project menace and power using only his eyes, voice, and precise physical control, without any of the facial expressiveness most actors rely on heavily. However, that's only part of the story. Fiennes has spoken in interviews about the unusual technical challenge of shooting scenes multiple times using different camera and lighting setups, since the visual effects required to erase his nose digitally needed extremely precise, consistent performances across multiple takes and angles, a level of technical patience not typically required for more traditional acting roles. What happened next surprised many skeptics who doubted a serious dramatic actor could successfully embody such a fantastical villain. Fiennes's performance became widely regarded as one of the most genuinely frightening and effective portrayals of pure evil in modern family-friendly cinema, striking a difficult balance between theatrical menace and genuine psychological terror that resonated with both younger audiences and longtime fans of the source material. Looking back, Fiennes has often noted in interviews that he approached the character less as a traditional monster and more as a study in total narcissism and cruelty, a choice that gave the performance a chilling, almost human coldness beneath all the fantastical visual elements. Now 2026, Fiennes's portrayal remains widely regarded as one of the definitive fantasy villain performances in modern cinema, still frequently cited alongside far more famous horror genre villains despite the franchise's family-friendly classification. He's continued building an extraordinarily respected and diverse career since, but the role remains one of his most publicly recognized, particularly among younger generations who grew up with the franchise. 6. Robin Williams as Mrs. Doubtfire. Few comedic transformations in film history required quite the same level of daily physical commitment as Robin Williams's portrayal of a devoted father who disguises himself as an elderly British nanny to stay close to his children after a divorce. Few people know just how extensive the daily prosthetic makeup process actually became, with reports indicating Williams spent upward of 4 to 5 hours in the makeup chair each morning just to transform into the character, one of the most demanding daily routines of his entire career. However, that's only part of the story. Williams has spoken in interviews about how physically restrictive the full costume and prosthetics eventually became, particularly during warmer filming days, describing the experience as genuinely uncomfortable despite the character's comedic, light-hearted tone on screen. The prosthetic work was so extensive and convincing that Williams reportedly found it difficult to be fully recognized by crew members who hadn't worked with him directly during the transformation process. What happened next surprised many who assumed the physical demands might limit his comedic performance. Instead, Williams delivered one of the most beloved and technically impressive comedic performances of the 1990s, frequently improvising dialogue and physical comedy on the spot despite the significant restrictions the makeup and costume placed on his movement and facial expressiveness. Unfortunately, the film's emotional core, a father desperately trying to remain close to his children after losing custody, resonated deeply with audiences well beyond its comedic surface, and in the years since Williams's tragic passing in 2014, many fans and critics have revisited the performance with a renewed appreciation for the genuine warmth and heartbreak Williams brought to the role beneath all the physical comedy. Looking back, colleagues and directors who worked with Williams on the film have often described the daily transformation process as a testament to his dedication, noting that despite the discomfort, he never once complained about the demanding routine required to bring the character convincingly to life. Now 2026, Mrs. Doubtfire remains one of the most beloved family comedies of the 1990s, and Williams's transformation is still frequently cited in makeup and prosthetics retrospectives as one of the most technically demanding comedic transformations ever achieved. Nearly 3 decades later, the film, and Williams's performance within it, continues to be rediscovered by new generations of viewers, its emotional depth resonating even more strongly with the benefit of hindsight. 7. Andy Serkis as Gollum. If any actor on this list fundamentally changed how the film industry thinks about performance and technology, it's Andy Serkis. Long before motion capture acting was widely respected as a legitimate craft, Serkis took on the role of Gollum, a tormented, split-personality creature central to one of the most ambitious fantasy film trilogies ever made. Few people know just how physically demanding the motion capture process actually was in its early, relatively primitive form, requiring Serkis to perform every scene in a full-body suit covered in tracking markers, often crawling, contorting, and physically embodying the character's twisted, hunched movement for hours at a time. However, that's only part of the story. Serkis didn't just provide movement reference for later digital animation, he delivered the character's entire vocal performance live on set, developing Gollum's now iconic raspy, dual-toned voice through extensive vocal experimentation, reportedly damaging his voice at points during the demanding recording process required to distinguish between the character's 2 conflicting personalities. What happened next surprised and eventually transformed the entire film industry's approach to digital character performance. Serkis' work was so technically groundbreaking and emotionally compelling that it sparked a significant industry-wide conversation about whether motion capture performances should be eligible for traditional acting awards, a debate that continued for years and ultimately helped elevate motion capture acting into the widely respected specialized craft it's recognized as today. Unfortunately, despite widespread critical acclaim for the performance itself, Serkis' groundbreaking work was not recognized with major traditional acting award nominations during this era, a frustration many industry commentators have pointed to for years as an example of award bodies struggling to fully appreciate technologically assisted performances as genuine acting. Looking back, Serkis has continued advocating for greater recognition of motion capture performers throughout his career, eventually becoming one of the most respected voices in the entire field, both as a performer and later as a director specializing in the very technology his early work helped legitimize. Now 2026, Serkis' Gollum remains widely regarded as one of the most technically groundbreaking and emotionally layered performances in film history, credited with fundamentally changing how the industry approaches digital character performance. He's continued expanding his motion capture work across numerous major franchises since, and is now recognized as one of the true pioneers of the entire craft. 8. Jared Leto as the Joker. Few actor transformations in recent memory generated quite as much pre-release media attention as Jared Leto's approach to playing the Joker in a 2016 ensemble superhero film. Leto had already built a reputation for intense, immersive preparation methods on previous projects, and reports about his process for this particular role became widely publicized well before the film's release, with numerous stories circulating about the lengths he reportedly went to fully commit to the character during production. Few people know just how differently Leto approached the visual design of his version of the character compared to previous portrayals, opting for a heavily tattooed, gold-toothed, more overtly theatrical and unsettling aesthetic that stood in deliberate contrast to earlier cinematic interpretations. A bold creative choice that generated significant discussion among fans even before anyone had seen the finished performance. However, that's only part of the story. The film itself received a notably mixed critical response upon release, with several reviewers specifically noting that Leto's role, despite the extensive build-up and preparation reportedly invested in the character, ended up with considerably less screen time in the final theatrical cut than many fans had anticipated based on marketing materials. What happened next surprised many longtime fans who felt the character deserved a more complete showcase. Leto later reprised a different, more fully realized version of the character in a separate, extended director's cut of a subsequent film, which numerous critics and fans felt provided a more satisfying and complete showcase of his interpretation compared to the character's original, more limited theatrical appearance. Looking back, Leto has continued discussing the role in interviews as one of the more challenging and, at times, frustrating experiences of his career, particularly regarding the disconnect between the depth of preparation invested and the amount of material that ultimately made it to screen in the character's initial release. Now 2026, Leto's Joker remains one of the most debated and discussed comic book villain portrayals in recent film history, generating ongoing conversation between fans who appreciated his bold, unconventional take and those who felt the character was ultimately underserved by the film's editing and pacing decisions. Leto has continued working steadily across film and music since, but the role remains one of the most polarizing entries in his filmography. 9. Colin Farrell as the Penguin. When it was first announced that a leading man best known for charismatic, conventionally attractive roles would be playing one of Gotham's most grotesque villains, many fans assumed the casting would rely heavily on digital effects to achieve the character's iconic look. What actually happened surprised almost everyone. Colin Farrell underwent one of the most extensive prosthetic transformations in modern comic book cinema, a process so complete that many early viewers of the film's marketing materials genuinely couldn't identify him at all, some assuming an entirely different, lesser-known character actor had been cast in the role. Few people know just how long the daily transformation actually took. Reports from the production indicate Farrell spent upward of 3 to 4 hours in the makeup chair each day, with a team of prosthetic artists applying layered facial pieces, a fat suit, and detailed skin texturing designed to completely reshape his features into the character's now iconic heavy-set, scarred, and weathered appearance. However, that's only part of the story. Farrell has spoken extensively in interviews about how liberating the transformation ultimately became for his performance, explaining that once the prosthetics were fully applied, he genuinely stopped seeing himself in the mirror, allowing him to fully commit to the character's voice, posture, and mannerisms without any of his own recognizable features pulling him back toward his usual on-screen persona. He reportedly developed an entirely new, gravelly vocal register and a distinct physical walk specifically for the role, treating the transformation almost like building a completely separate performer from the ground up. What happened next surprised industry observers who expected the prosthetic-heavy performance might feel more like a novelty than a genuinely respected piece of acting. Instead, critics widely praised Farrell's performance as one of the most surprising and effective transformations in recent comic book film history, with several reviewers noting that his committed physical work and vocal performance carried genuine emotional weight beneath all the prosthetic work, elevating the character well beyond a simple visual gimmick. Unfortunately, the daily physical discomfort of the extensive prosthetics and fat suit became a significant challenge throughout the demanding shooting schedule, with Farrell describing certain filming days as particularly exhausting given the combination of restrictive costuming and the emotionally intense material the role required him to perform. Looking back, the performance was considered significant enough within the industry that it led directly to an expanded spin-off television series built entirely around the character, an unusually rare outcome for what began as a supporting role in a larger ensemble film, and a clear signal of just how deeply audiences connected with Farrell's fully committed transformation. Now 2026, Farrell's Penguin has become one of the most celebrated modern comic book villain transformations, and his continued work in the character's spin-off series has only deepened critical appreciation for just how completely he disappeared into the role. Today, the performance is frequently cited alongside some of the greatest prosthetic transformations in film history, remarkable given how unrecognizable Farrell became despite his significant existing fame and distinctive natural features. 10. Bill Nighy as Davy Jones. Closing out this list is a performance that pushed motion capture and prosthetic technology in an entirely different creative direction. Bill Nighy's portrayal of the tentacle-faced, cursed pirate captain in a major fantasy adventure franchise required an unusual hybrid approach, blending live motion capture performance with extensive digital character design, resulting in one of the most visually elaborate character transformations of the entire 2000s. Few people know that Nighy actually performed all of his scenes in a full motion capture suit covered in tracking markers, often opposite entirely empty sets, required to imagine and react to elaborate digital environments and effects that wouldn't actually be visible until the film's post-production process was complete months later. This meant Nighy had to deliver a fully committed, emotionally convincing performance based almost entirely on imagination and direction from the filmmakers, without any of the usual visual or physical reference most actors rely on. However, that's only part of the story. Nighy has spoken in interviews about how unusual and occasionally disorienting the process became, describing the experience of performing intense, dramatic dialogue while wearing a skin-tight tracking suit and facial markers, with a director calling out imagined details about tentacles, water effects, and other characters that existed only conceptually during actual filming. What happened next surprised many who worried the character's heavily digital final appearance might overshadow Nighy's actual performance underneath it all. Instead, critics specifically praised how much genuine menace, sorrow, and dark charisma came through in the character despite the character's face being almost entirely computer-generated in the finished film, a testament to just how effectively Nighy's underlying vocal and physical performance translated through the extensive digital transformation. Looking back, Nighy has often reflected with good humor on the strangeness of the entire experience, noting in various interviews that despite how technically unusual the process felt at the time, he takes genuine pride in a performance that helped push forward what was creatively possible within blockbuster filmmaking during that particular era of visual effects technology. Now 2026, Nighy's performance remains widely regarded as one of the most successful examples of blending live performance with heavily digital character design, frequently cited in visual effects retrospectives as a benchmark moment for the technology of its era. He's continued building an extraordinarily respected and varied career since, but the role remains one of the most technically unique and fondly remembered transformations of his entire filmography. Looking back across all 10 of these transformations, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. Every single performance on this list required something most audiences never fully appreciate while watching the finished film, real sacrifice. Hours in makeup chairs before sunrise. Physical discomfort stretched across entire productions. In some cases, genuine risk to an actor's voice, vision, or well-being, all in service of convincing millions of people that someone, or something, entirely different was standing in front of the camera. Some of these transformations launched entire franchises. A couple sparked serious industry-wide conversations about what acting even means when technology is involved. And tragically, one of the most beloved performances on this list is inseparable from real, profound loss. What ties all 10 of these performances together isn't prosthetics, or motion capture markers, or hours in a makeup chair. It's the fact that underneath every single unrecognizable transformation was a real person, choosing discomfort, isolation, and sometimes real personal risk, simply to make an audience believe in something that wasn't actually real. That's the quiet magic so easy to forget while watching these films. The green skin, the smeared face paint, the tentacled beard, none of it means anything without a real actor willing to disappear completely inside it. And when you think about it that way, these performances aren't just some of the most iconic transformations in film history. They're some of the most genuinely selfless. If one of these transformations genuinely shocked you, or if comparing Heath Ledger's and Jared Leto's completely different takes on the same character gave you a new appreciation for either performance, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the actors who completely disappeared into their most iconic roles, subscribe, because there are plenty more incredible transformations still to uncover.